know you only get one life.
John Maxwell once said, "A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." Today, I'm joined by Cedric Solice, founder and CEO of CLS Leadership Solutions. With over 25 years of experience across music, athletics, higher education, corporate America, and global consulting, Cedric has lived that definition of leadership. Now, through CLS, he's dedicated to helping leaders at every level expand their capacity, communicate with purpose, and lead with integrity. Cedric, really happy to have you on here today. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, man, I'm super excited to be here. You just made me sound amazing. So, thank you.
Hey, man, like I told you in the beginning, you came dressed to impress and you made me look more professional. So I do what I can, but you definitely helped lift the level of this show today. So thanks, man.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, like you said, I think we've been connected for a while. We finally now have gotten to do this. And I think, I truly believe that timing's everything. And I think the timing's perfect for where I am at my stage in life, where you are and what you're doing. And I'm, like I said, I'm looking forward to it. And with that, give you a chance here to introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, like I said, once again, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been a fan of yours and just watching how you've developed what you've developed for some time. So congratulations to you on all your success and where you've gotten to this point. And I've seen the coming soon ads. So good for you.
Thank you.
That's going to be awesome. As far as me, I'm a Washington, D.C. native. I currently reside in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I've had a pretty unique journey. They kind of call me the jack of all trades, maybe the ace at none. We'll see. But, I grew up as a military brat. So I grew up in a military family, did a lot of traveling as a kid, a lot of moving, and then went to school for music and enjoyed that journey. And then that pivoted to some work with drum and bugle corps, high school marching bands, judging, all that. Then I went to grad school, and before getting to grad school, I started my high school coaching career, then went to grad school and ended up working with Syracuse women's basketball for 15 seasons after that. Went into corporate America after that, started my company shortly after that, and here we are today.
Great segue, man. You're a pro at this podcasting thing, because the first thing I wanted to jump into was, and it really caught my eye, this whole CLS Leadership Solutions. It seems like, you're building it on the idea of developing today's leaders for tomorrow. I think that's so important. And for your journey that you just talked about, what moment in that journey really inspired you to dedicate your work to the mission you're currently on?
That's a great question. It's been an evolution. There wasn't one particular moment. It was one of those things where you have a moment of clarity, a moment of realization, maybe where you're transitioning. For me, it was a transition moment where I was going from one thing to another, but I realized how much I enjoyed something that was a derivative of the original thing. And so I enjoyed public speaking. I enjoyed professional speaking. I enjoyed sharing a message that helped people. And I realized that I wasn't horrible at it. And so I wanted to do it more because I believed that there was something that I had to share. And as I did that, I said, okay, well, as I'm moving out of this collegiate athletic space, how do I leverage that? Because, when you're at Syracuse University, that name speaks for itself. So people don't want to speak to Cedric Solice at that point. They want to speak to the Syracuse University assistant coach. And so I needed to figure out a way to recreate that platform without that name, because I was no longer attached to that name. So that's how the company came about. But the journey toward doing the things that led me to even formulating the company happened over time. It happened because of a passion of wanting to develop people, teach people, lead people, help people to become better, and realize myself that I'm not going down the hallway to tell Jim Boeheim how to be a better leader. That's a pretty horrible idea, because that guy's been doing it for 50 plus years. I'm not going into General CQ Brown's office and saying, hey, you're the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, but I have an idea for you to be a better leader. That's a pretty horrible idea. It's already established that he's a great leader. How can I help him become a leader that can step in authentically tomorrow based off of what he knows today, and either reaffirm or re-enlighten some things that he may want to utilize and add to his tool belt?
Well, I mean, just that little bit there. One thing that stands out to me, well, two things that I'm really happy about. I really came across you, I think, on social media more about from the leadership perspective. And until I actually start to look into it more, I wasn't aware of, the accolades with Syracuse University and things like that. I was very impressed just from who you are today and what you're doing. So I think that was a really good credit to you, that for me, it wasn't even about some of that other stuff. To your point, like you said, when it comes to Syracuse University and what you achieved there, again, huge kudos. And I think for me, seeing you in this leadership space is, where I start to learn of you. And the other thing that jumps out at me right away is the public speaking, the way you speak. And it's really, and for somebody like me who's striving to eventually go there, Cedric, I can learn lessons just by sitting here across from you now and hearing the way you do it. So thank you for that. Besides Syracuse, I think, obviously basketball, Syracuse University, that's like a big thing. Military, big thing. I thought this was interesting. You got your start though with, the drum and bugle corps, leading those groups, and you led those groups to world titles. How did those early experiences in music shape the way you lead and coach today?
That activity, it literally changed my life. Being a performer in that activity, I would say, saved my life. Being able to teach in that activity changed my life. And the big thing that you learn in that activity is no one does it by themselves. No one can run a drum corps by themselves. No one can lead a drum corps by themselves. It is a truly collaborative, probably the ultimate team effort. When you're taking, I think it's now 160, but when I was doing it, it was 135 young adults ranging from ages 16 to 22, and putting them together to create this product, this performance product that's going to compete against other people at the top level in the world, and to try to get them to chase the ultimate level of perfection in performance with the idea of, yes, you want to win, but you want to excite a crowd. You want to create a memory that is lasting forever. And so how do you do that? You assemble great people, you assemble great talent, and you put all those skills and all those talents together from an instructional standpoint, from a performance standpoint. And when you're out there and you're doing this every day, and when you're on tour, it is every day. You go away for spring training. So spring training is like an abbreviated boot camp. It's where you learn your whole deal. The days are very long. You're talking 10, 12, 13-hour days, 7 days a week. And you just get after it for about 3.5 weeks. And then you take that show on the road and you do a national tour from that point all the way until, so you move in, let's say some point in May, and then you hit the road at some point in June, and you go until August, until World Finals. And so you're doing this every day, and finding a way to communicate information that will help the membership get better, challenge the membership every day, trying to find a way to do that every day in a different way, authentically, that becomes a task in and of itself. And you have to become a very creative instructor. You have to become a creative leader, because it's the Charlie Brown thing. Womp, 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 womp. After 3 weeks, you're tired of hearing it, much less 3 months. And so, and honestly, this goes all the way back into November. That's when you move in 1 week in a month, you come and you have those camps. So they've been hearing your voice for a long time. How do you deliver the same core message for that period of time effectively? How do you help lead these young people so that they can achieve better, more tomorrow effectively? And so that takes a lot of mental judo on your part, thinking about what you've done, where you're at, feeling the pacing of it, checking out your membership, checking out your personnel, your people. Where are they at? Are they feeling it pretty rough right now? Are we in that hard part of the tour? We're in the southern belt of the United States. and it's just super hot every day. You know, there's a lot of things that you have to put into the equation in terms of how you're going to lead these people every day. Do you have a product that they believe in? The design team, the people who are putting together this show that you're teaching, that they give the membership a product that's going to work and inspire them to want to get better every day. So there's so many things that go into that process. But for me, in terms of being an instructor at that level, and not only leading young people, but even having the opportunity to lead a staff was an ultimate challenge, but it was a tremendous joy. I had a lot of fun doing it. And I learned, I wouldn't say more in that job than anywhere else, but I would say that was a huge chunk to my development as a leader.
You know, it's funny, when I prep for the podcast, I'm always wondering what I'm going to ask and like what's going to be most beneficial. And I am so glad I asked you that now, because I didn't expect to learn so much about it from that answer. Like, honestly, I didn't have any idea how much went into that. But hearing what you described, I can see how that transitions and transcends into other aspects and other, you know, it's almost agnostic as far as what the industry is. So no, that's really good stuff. So then I guess the next question is, obviously you're at Syracuse, and from what I could see, you wore a lot of hats there at Syracuse. How did those roles prepare you for some of the current work you're doing now?
It's funny. So every role I've ever had, I never expected to do it. And that includes drum and bugle corps. So one of the unique things about my journey was literally just an idea popped in my mind. I got excited about something, or something piqued my interest. And I literally just went and I asked, hey, I'd like to be a part of this. How can I do that? I have some experience in it, whether it was being a basketball player, whether it was being a marching musician, a teacher, a judge, whatever the case may be. And so the same thing kind of happened at Syracuse, and the same thing happened at Syracuse. And so I started off as a volunteer. I did that for 2 years. And I will tell anybody, I tell this to young people all the time, but this really goes for anybody. Volunteering is the best space to operate in. And it's where you're going to learn the absolute most, because when you're a volunteer, there's no job description assigned to you. And so you're not held accountable to perform in a particular area all the time. So you're not responsible for that area. When you're a volunteer, they give you tasks, and then they kind of open up the organization to you so that you can look and learn. So those 2 years as a volunteer were phenomenal for me, because I got to look and learn, and I got to peek into college athletics at a level that I never imagined, because I didn't go into it thinking I was going to be a college coach. I went into it thinking I'm in grad school. I'm going to learn some things, and then I'm going to go back and teach high school or work at the college level as a professor of music and coach high school basketball along the way, because I love basketball, played it the whole nine. So when I was volunteering and I'm taking this peek in, and then all of a sudden I get the first offer to now become a graduate assistant. Now a new light bulb goes off, and you know what? I can actually possibly have a career here. And then I get the next position. Oh yeah, I'm jonesing on this right here. How can I get better? And then the more I did, the more I dove deep into it, and the more I studied it, and the harder I worked at it. Each position taught me something. There were huge transitions that were hard learning lessons sometimes. That journey going from a volunteer to a graduate assistant, and then a graduate assistant into a full-time staff member. Well, that changes relationships. That changes the relationships you have with the student athletes. So now you have to navigate your relationship with them differently. Failed horribly at that initially. Horrible failure, right? I did, because you just don't understand. All you understand is what your responsibility is. And you think that your relationship will hold strong through your readjustment to your new responsibility. What you don't understand is that you have to reimagine a little bit those relationships in comparison to what your responsibilities are. So every time I moved into a new realm of responsibility, it changed my relationships across the program. But a lot of people don't think about that from a leadership standpoint. And they always talk about how different it is one seat over and one seat over. And it's one of those things where you don't realize it until you're sitting in that new seat. and the pressure to perform. You know, in college athletics, let's be honest, it's about winning. And so, you know, we want to graduate student athletes. We want to develop young people. We want to do all those things. But no athletic department is pouring the money that they're pouring into these programs to lose. They want to win too. So there's a lot of pressure to perform. There's a lot of pressure to be great and elite at what you do. And once again, nobody can do this thing alone. The leadership becomes a team effort. Yes, there is a leader, but that leader is reliant on the team to help them lead. And a great leader will empower their other leaders to lead in their roles as well. And I had a great leader. I worked for a guy who just empowered me to take my bull by the horns and just roll and go full steam ahead. And I learned a lot. He empowered me to do a lot of things. He let me in the room on a lot of things that opened up my perspective. I really learned about how things work. I learned how decisions were made. I learned about the whys and the whats and the whens. I learned about timing. I learned about how important it is to hire, when, and where. There's so many things that I learned that helped me become a better leader because he showed me what the challenge of leadership was by allowing me in the room, but also giving me responsibilities that may have been uncommon.
Cedric, I got to be honest with you. And I mean, you know, obviously this is my passion project, but in my professional, my current role, one of the things is really, I've been really leaning on trying to help develop the next level of leaders. And honestly, I think a good compliment I can give you here is I think that section there, I promise you this, I'm going to carve that out and have them listen to it. Couple folks that I'm really working with closely, I'm going to have them listen to that specifically because I think you touched on so much there that I think is really important for as we move forward. I was just having a conversation the other day with someone how I was saying how I was always content being Robin to Batman, right? I was the leader behind the leader and I love that role. But what I had said to someone was, that actually gave me probably my biggest ability to build my relationships and my network. And to what you just said, when you get to the level that's next, if you already have an established somewhat of a network, not only does the relationship you have change, it gets a little harder to build more when you get there. So no, that was really good. And I think there was a little PSA in there for young people of the look and learn because that's huge. I'm going through that now. My 18-year-old just graduated high school. She's a competitive dancer. Guess what? We're going a little bit of a different route. You're not ready. You don't know you know what? She's looking around. She's choreographing. She's doing all that. Take your time. Let's look. We learn. Then we make a decision. So no, I'm so happy I'm talking to you because that even gave me more confidence in that decision. So thank you for that. So good,
absolutely.
Good stuff.
I really believe that one of the things I say, you know, people talk about it's lonely at the top, right? It's only at the top because accountability rests at the top. So the higher you go, the more accountable you are for things. And people don't understand what you're really accountable for. And it's very difficult to explain that. So every time you move one seat over and you have more responsibility, the more responsibility you have, the more you're accountable. The genius to leadership, I think, and I've seen this both in the drum corps idiom and both in corporate America and collegiate athletics, those leaders who are able to be comfortable in their responsibility toward accountability, but still be able to delegate things that are critical. You know, one of my favorite people, I love him to death, Todd Ryan. He is a Hall of Famer. He's Drum Corps International Hall of Famer. This guy he doesn't have enough fingers and toes to carry the rings that he's won in terms of world championships. But he's an individual who does a phenomenal job of bringing people to the table and allowing them to shine in their gifts, to be great at what they do. And so he gives a lot of responsibility to his staff and he challenges them to develop in that role, to be creative in that role. My boss in Syracuse, same thing. They were responsible for what we did. Todd was responsible for what we did as staff members. Coach Q was responsible for what we did as staff members, but still he entrusted us with those responsibilities so that we could have that opportunity to be great. So, it was one of those things where I think that it's very, very important that leaders remember, yes, you are responsible for being accountable, but you have to hand over some of that delegation, and it's just important.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. That's, like I said, really, really good stuff. That segment really, really, that got me pumped up. Thank you. That was really, really good. I think I read somewhere, I think it was one of your first companies, Builder's First Source, I believe. You launched the first internship program there?
Yes.
So what, you were connecting college students and the transitioning military members to careers. What did that teach you about helping build new pathways for future leaders?
I thought about it from the standpoint of being a person who had gone through that before myself. And so it was one of those situations where I had, trying to figure out what I was going to do for my life and in my life, and somebody giving me an opportunity. How could I cultivate something for young people in such a way that they could explore and find something that fit them in the midst of this collegiate experience that is a crazy experience? I mean, if you think about what college really is, it's a crazy, crazy experience. And so how can I cultivate something for these young people where they have this experience of how to become a professional while at the same time, helping them explore our company and making it a place that they would want to land. It's twofold. And one of the things that I've always understood about recruiting was you're not going to get every person that you recruit, but every person that you recruit, you can help. So I didn't go into the process of that exploring, hey, I'm going to get 100% of the people that I recruit here. What I went into it was, how can I help 100% of the people and retain as many as I can? And so that was the focus in which I navigated that journey. Was we want to bring in the most talented people, the most talented young people, have them explore this journey, open up our company to them so that they can see it for what it is and what the possibilities it can create for them. And at the same time, teach them some things about being a professional, teach them some things about what it's going to look like beyond college so that they have an opportunity to be more successful. So that was the premise behind what I was trying to accomplish there.
Yeah, it's funny when you say that. It makes me think about two things. I always talk about being grateful, right? But the other thing as I get older is helping others. How can we give back? Because I feel like the more we give back, the more that comes back to us. And I think what you just explained there is a great example of that. So yeah, no, that sounds like a really good initiative you had going there.
I'm super proud that there's still young people who, I'm no longer there, who have full-time jobs there, who now have a career, have a focus and a mission, right? That for me, that's what it's all about, is planting a seed and letting that thing grow. And how many acorns can we put in the ground that can become oak trees that can last, changing lives?
That's awesome. No, I'm happy for you that you get to experience that. I think that's really, really great, and good on you and good on them. So no, really, really good stuff. Cedric, I think you had said something before about words have value, leaders value how you use them. How do you personally, how do you practice intentional communication in your own leadership, and how do you help others build that skill?
A lot of failure at first.
Amen to that.
a lot of trial and error. I'll say this. One of the things that we are all human. As a leader, how can we remember that we're leading humans? I think will guide how we speak to people. Everybody's going to have a bad day. I have them as a leader. My leaders have had them, and the people that I've been responsible for will have them. How can I best communicate through that? It's easy to communicate when everything's going well. So that's the easiest form of communication, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a friendship, or whether it's professional. How can you communicate when things are not? And that requires, there's a reason why many of your really good leaders have a little seniority behind them, have a little gray in the beard, a little gray in the hair, right? Because they've gone through some experiences where they've stumbled horribly, horrifically. I have stumbled horribly and horrifically in my leadership in many spaces in terms of communication in a moment, not understanding what the best way to do it was. And I think that at a certain point, you're either going to learn the lesson or you're going to be the lesson, continue to be the lesson. And leaders, we have a very short leash on being the lesson. It's one of those deals where you really have to apply what you learned and quickly. And if you want the best out of your people, you have to learn how to communicate to them in the best, most authentic way that works for them. I'm a believer in, everybody talks about love languages and all that other stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm not a subscriber to love languages. I'm a subscriber to communication code. How can I communicate with each person authentically in a way that works for them while maintaining the structure of either the vision or the mission that we're trying to work toward or accomplish, so that everybody understands that we are seamlessly connected through that, but I recognize who you are as an individual person. Now, you might have a responsibility, a collective responsibility that's shared amongst you as people who are working for the organization. And yes, I'm going to hold you accountable for the achievement of that. But how I do that with you is probably most likely going to be different than how I do that with someone else, because of how you receive communication. I could challenge you in a certain way that I may not be able to challenge this person over here. You see that in coaching all the time, all the time. You see it in the military, maybe not so much, right? Because in the military, the rules are a little bit different. In the military, if I'm the drill instructor and we're in basic recruit training, well, I can bark at everybody. Now, over time, I may learn that I can push some buttons over here that will get you to do something a little better than maybe how I would do it over here. But all in all, my goal is to get all of you moving in the same direction this way. In coaching, because we're not bound by the same laws and rules, if you say no to a drill instructor, if you say no to a senior NCO or officer, you know where you're going? Jail. In sport, there's this leeway of I'm not going to say yes to that. I'm not going to say no right away. So how can I convince you in a world where I don't have the same leverage of rule and law to get you to do what I need you to do? Well, that comes down to communication. That comes down to really learning the individual and ensuring that we have a transparent relationship regarding how we communicate with each other, trying to always leverage the best way to communicate with each other, understanding we're not going to be perfect at that. And hopefully probably the most important thing I can do is get you to understand my intent. So once you understand my heart first, and my heart is in the right place for you, regardless of how it comes out, if you can understand my intent because you recognize my heart, that will allow me and it will allow you a little more leeway in terms of how we can communicate with each other. It opens that up. So something early on that you might take offense to, well, once you've learned my heart, later on, if I don't deliver it right in the heat of the moment, because you understand my heart, you can recognize the intent and apply the information better. So I think that if I were to share anything about utilizing words, if you want to be received as a leader from a communication standpoint, show people your heart first and be consistent and authentic with that, so that your intent will always come through. You still have a responsibility to the words that you use. It's important. You have to think before you speak, because as a leader, a lot of times once you speak, it is now policy, and that policy isn't just on paper. That policy is sometimes felt. That policy creates culture. Okay, this is how this leader speaks to us. That's policy now, right? It's not about the policy on paper or the rule of law. It's about, okay, this is the culture. That's the policy of this culture. So every time you speak, you have a responsibility to what comes out of your mouth. But even in that, I think a really good leader will receive a tremendous amount of grace if they start with connecting with the heart first.
Man, again, a lot of great stuff there. I'm looking forward to listening to this back, honestly. I think as I'm like listening now, I'm already in my head. Can't wait to listen to it as just somebody listening to it. That whole love language, it's more about your communication code. Really, really top level stuff there, Cedric. And I'm learning. Again, I tell people all the time, I think selfishly this podcast, I do it more for me just to learn. I get to have conversations I'm learning under the guise of conversations, but no, this is really, really good stuff. You touched on a little bit there, and I was curious. You mentioned about the military, that angle, but also your experience in corporate America with corporate executives. What is there any leadership principles that you would say kind of can be applied universally across the two? And then are there any that are just unique? You can get one in one world, but not the other world.
There are a ton of transferable leadership principles that will work across. The question is, how do you deliver them? And one of the big things that I've noticed with military populations that I work with, the struggle in terms of when they're transitioning from the military into the civilian workforce is, how do we deliver? There's a way in the military in which you deliver where it's just readily received, because that's part of the culture. Like I said, that policy, how I speak to you, we now understand that first day you walk into that, you come off that bus and that drill instructor or that drill sergeant standing there and yelling, oh, this is the culture. And so it's a direct and assertive culture, and it's just received. It's one of those things where, hey, stop focusing on the delivery, focus on the message. Immediate obedience to orders, right? That's military. Civilian world, not so much. You're dealing with people who are free thinkers. And yes, they're operating within the confines of an organization, but there are a lot of there's a greater set of lateral limits in the civilian world than there are with the military world. So now how do you deliver those tenets of leadership? How do you moderate your language, particularly your tone? What I've learned is the more senior the leader in military who's coming out into the civilian world, the easier the transition is. Because the more senior the leader, the more political they've had to learn how to speak. They're dealing with people in organizations at a different level with the same level of expectation. It's your junior leaders that are coming out that have the biggest trouble, because it's that person-to-person field level military experience. But the tenets of leadership are the same: taking care of your people, understanding what your mission is, understanding what the vision is, and being able to articulate that at all times. Preparation, planning at elite levels, and ensuring that you have trained your people to accomplish those things at the highest level humanly possible. All those things are transferable across space. Being able to sit back and operate with a vision beyond the moment that you're sitting in, so that you can prepare for challenges that people may not be able to see, that your experience is going to tell you is coming. Once again, fits in both spaces. And that's coaching, that's civilian world, corporate America, that's higher education, that's military, that's sport, the whole nine. All those tenets of leadership fit. How you deliver it is what is the most important thing. So I think that leadership is always transferable. You have to find a way as a leader to make it work within the confines of, one, your lateral limits, but two, the culture. There are a lot of leaders who come in and whether it be by mandate or by choice, they come in and they try to change things immediately. And sometimes it's a mandate. There are a lot of athletic directors who are hired by university presidents. Your first job is to come in and get rid of this coach. Oh, well, okay. If I don't do my job, I'm not going to have a job. Once again, that goes back to a lot of people don't understand the responsibility of leader. Therefore, they don't understand the accountability that leaders have to their leaders. And so there creates this disconnect, right? But in executing your responsibility, even as a new leader, you still have a responsibility to learn the culture so that you can deliver that accountability appropriately. And so I think all leadership traits, for the most part, are transferable. It really matters how you deliver them.
It's as you speak about it, I think about, you mentioned tone and the way you deliver, and it's interesting when I think sometimes to probably more junior leaders or maybe people in general, but one thing about the tone, I say to people about not just the tone, but sometimes you use too many words, right? For example, you'll ask a question and the response is remember. They start with remember, and it's kind of like you're already showing your tone and your attitude by starting with that. They ask the question, answer the question. You don't need to add your words or how you feel because you think you're repeating yourself. But as you say that, I think, again, I don't think people take it as serious enough, Cedric. I think that tone is huge. And because, listen, we could have the best messages in the world, but if somebody doesn't like our delivery or they feel we're being condescending or we think we know it all, they don't want to hear it. But man, so no, I'm really glad you touched on that.
Well, and I have one thing for that really quick. Think about it in these terms. We'll go back to the military. There's this old kind of fable in the military of a private spilling coffee on private or corporal spilling coffee on a general. And he stumbles, bring the general coffee, stumbles and spills it in the coffee. And the private's freaking out because this private thinks, oh, I'm about to get stationed in Alaska for the next 10 years of my career, right? And the general looks at the private and says, hey, it's okay. What you should be thankful for is that I'm not a second lieutenant. And for military people, they'll get that, but it kind of goes back to that adage of what I was talking about with senior leaders who have been through the ringer and they understand what is important. They understand what is important to deliver and what is important to say. And I think the most important thing from a communication standpoint that junior leaders can learn is what is really important. We think as a junior leader, everything is important. It's not. We think that we have to say and do everything. We don't. And that is where a ton of failure comes in, but it's where a ton of learning comes in too. Because as you're learning to do, as you're learning to say, you're growing. And there are going to be some things where you go, okay, yes, I need to be able to do that, but not here. I need to be able to do that over there. And if I don't practice how to do that, I'm missing the boat.
Yeah, no, I think this is a lot of extremely valuable lessons that you're speaking of here that anybody who's moving forward in their careers in leadership could learn from. One of the things that I'm big on, and I wanted to touch on this before we ended here, saying I heard years ago about in leadership, trust is our currency. And I know that you mentioned about how sacred trust is. But we can think that we know it, right? I think our job, though, how do you instill that sense of accountability for others to pick up on the importance of that trust as leaders?
I think the number one thing is consistency and transparency. And transparency doesn't mean that you have to say everything. Transparency could be, hey, there are going to be times where I just cannot tell you, but understand I'm making decisions based off of these things. So there may be something that I cannot share because it exists at a level of propriety that is just not available here. But I need you to recognize and understand that this is how I'm going to base every decision. These are the things that I'm going to consider. And if you're challenging your junior leaders to operate in the same way, to be consistent in everything they do, show up consistently. And that doesn't mean you have to show up perfectly, but in terms of the data points of your progression, the data points of your progress, that you show up consistently and that you're operating transparently in the areas that you can, you will instill a culture of accountability, because people will want to be what they see if it works.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a leader that I implicitly trust, I'm going to just by proxy adapt some of those things, some of those traits, some of those behaviors. And so I think trust is instilled by, one, telling the truth, two, being authentic. People can tell when you're not being what you're portraying. And I think that there is a mask that leaders have to wear. I think that leaders do have to wear a mask. I mean, you think about drill instructors don't go home to their wife and child or husband and child and be drill instructors at home. It doesn't work. Right. So there is a mask to leadership, but there's still an authenticity there. You can still tell, even with the mask, is this drill instructor fair? Is this coach fair? Is this drill instructor reasonable? Or are they unreasonable? Is this manager reasonable or unreasonable, even behind the mask? So telling the truth, because the first time you lie to somebody and they figure it out, from a workplace standpoint, you're pretty much done. The first time that they realize that you're not being authentic and that they realize that that is a pattern, you're pretty much done. The first time that they recognize that you're not able to be consistent and they don't know what version of you they're going to get, you're pretty much done. And those are all the ingredients that we're pouring into the pot to instill trust. The first time that they recognize that you're not willing to accept accountability, and the first time that they recognize that you're not willing to protect them, you're done. It just is what it is. Nobody wants to feel as though they are out in cyberspace floating around on their own without the protection of their leader. The first time they recognize that you're just out for the bottom line instead of improving their line, you're done. Because now it's you against them and them against you, because they feel as though, well, I'm on my own here. And since I'm on my own and I can't trust this with you, that's how I'm going to move. So all those things go into building trust. It really comes down to, are you demonstrating every day that you care about the person? I asked a question actually yesterday, I think on LinkedIn. I said, is there a point ever where politics should supersede principle? Is there ever a point from a leadership standpoint, from a trust standpoint, where your consideration of your people should come second? If that point ever happens, you can understand that you've now broken the trust. You've broken the faith. You've broken this unspoken social contract that people have an expectation of when it comes to leaders and leadership. So that's trust. That's trust in leadership. And it's a hard job. Leadership is not easy. That's why everybody doesn't get to do it. And that's why everybody doesn't get paid the way leaders get paid. But it comes with a massive price.
Hey, Listen, well said by you, sir. Man, I could listen to you talk about these topics all day. And again, I'm looking forward to being even more connected with you as we move forward, Cedric. I really enjoyed this. Let me ask though, looking ahead, what kind of legacy do you hope CLS Leadership Solutions will leave? And then is there what's next for you personally?
Man, I want to help as many people as humanly possible. I want to help them become the person, the professional, the husband, the wife, the adult, the whatever it is that they're endeavoring to do. Because in everything that you do in your home, everybody in the home is a leader at something, even children. That's one of the things I appreciate about the Marine Corps. Lowest level leadership. They find a way to get that Lance Corporal to figure out how to lead.
Mm.
And so everybody is a leader in some way. How can I help you become the best leader you possibly can become so that you can craft out the best life for yourself and for your legacy that you can craft out and you can carve and you can develop? That, I think, is the ultimate legacy. And to consistently reaffirm how important leadership is, how important great organizational dynamics are, how important culture is. All those things are important in every facet of life. You know, a stay-at-home mom is a leader. She's a leader. She's a big-time leader. Understanding how to be the best stay-at-home mom and how to be the best leader in that vein is critically important. It is no less important than having the CEO of PepsiCo or the CEO of Amazon figure out how to be the best leader in their role. That's what I want to communicate. That's the legacy that I want to leave, that people always understand the importance of leadership. They understand their responsibility to it, and they understand that they can become a better leader every day in any vein, any idiom, and any set of responsibilities.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more, Cedric. I just love the mission that you're on. I really do. I mean that truly. Again, as I start to get older and move forward in my own career, just trying to be more connected and have relationships with guys like you. I'm super grateful. And like I said, I'm learning a whole hell of a lot sitting here today, listening to you speak about this. So again, thank you. Where could people connect with you, Cedric?
I'm proud to announce that we finally have a website up and running, and it's and I think it turned out pretty nice. So they can go to www.cls4leaders.com. They can visit me on LinkedIn. Just type in Cedric Solice, and they can see me on LinkedIn as CLS Leadership Solutions as well. And so they can read about the message. They can learn about the message. They can go to YouTube. I do a thing called the Solless Spot. I don't want to call it a podcast, but in the media world, I guess you would call it a podcast, where I talk about life, purpose, and leadership. And just I will deliver a very short message, 2 minutes. I try to keep it to 2 minutes or less on a thought. And it's the thought is to get you to think deeper about an element of life, leadership, or purpose. And if I can get people in that short blurb to think in such a way that it improves their way, if one person, I'm always about, I just want to reach one person, because who knows, I could be reaching the next Barack Obama. I could be reaching the next Mahatma Gandhi. I could be reaching the next Winston Churchill. I could be reaching the next Margaret Thatcher. And so if I can reach that one person, then that is a lifetime accomplishment for me. And so those are the places where I try to do that the most, and where you can find me.
Well, I'm definitely going to subscribe to your to the YouTube. You said, correct?
Yes, it's going to be on CLS Leadership Solutions on YouTube, and you can just type in, if you're just looking for individual episodes. I think there are 85 episodes up. It's called the Solless Spot. So you just type that in. You can type in season 1, 2, 3, or 4, and
I'll
just
check that out.
Hope you learn something.
I will definitely check that out, and I will make sure that I put the show notes. Everybody can easily find and navigate to these things easily. I think it will be good. And I will say kudos to the website. Very, very well done. If I seemed very prepared today for this interview, I'd like to think I was. It had a lot to do with Cedric's website. I was able to do a lot of research and get a lot of information from it. So well done by your team who put that together, Cedric. Again, very, very good source of information. So, well, listen, Cedric, it's been great. Glad we finally connected like this in person, virtually. Who knows, maybe someday we will be together in a room somewhere speaking on leadership. I would welcome that. And thank you again. And please, everybody who listens today, I appreciate it, but please share this around because I could care less about views and things like that, but I do believe today's episode is extremely valuable for a lot of leaders to listen to. So I hope they get as much from it as I did. So thank you. And Cedric, thanks again.
I appreciate you. And I just want to say really quick, thank you for all the leaders who ever invested in me. I'm not here without them. And the people who gave me an opportunity to step into a role or into a room that maybe I didn't necessarily deserve at the time, but they saw something at the time that allowed them, put some confidence in them to put me in that position. So thank you. Same thing here. For whatever reason, you said, hey, this is a guy I want on the show. And I appreciate you allowing me to share my thoughts in the message.
Well, great way to end it. I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
This
Bye.
has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.